Hi, I'm David Edmonds of the BBC World Service, and this is The Big Idea. I found the most fascinating ideas around, and the people who thought them up, and I'm going to do my best to explain them. Here is a machine. The cow. It's a technology. At least that's how today's big thinker sees it. The cow produces burgers, milk, butter. Regarded as a technology, it's hopelessly inefficient. This week's big idea, an alternative to meat, with a stake in the future.
Animals are just the technology that we have used up to now to produce this category of foods, but there's no reason to think that it's the best technology for producing these foods.
Meet the meat revolutionary Pat Brown. He says that livestock has catastrophic consequences for climate change and the environment. It swallows water and belches out greenhouse gases.
I think the most shocking fact is that the land-based animal agriculture system is, for all practical purposes, it is the entire land footprint of humanity. If you take every building, every house, factory, every building of any kind, plus every road and highway, every wall, you added up the total area of land that they occupy, it's about 0.5% of Earth's land area. Whereas the land that we're actively using today, grazing livestock and growing feed crops for them, is half of Earth's entire land surface. Almost 100 times more than the land footprint of every structure that humans have built. And occupying half of Earth's land surface has come at a tremendous cost to essential ecosystems that have been responsible for keeping the biosphere functional for millennia.
Pat Brown himself is no longer a meat eater. He gave up as a young man in medical school.
I would say just a personal choice. It was the fact that when I realized that eating meat from animals wasn't essential or even particularly valuable for my nutrition and health, that basically meant that the only reason I was doing it was for pleasure, and I felt that my pleasure didn't outweigh the value of the lives of the animals that were used to produce the meat, and I just didn't feel comfortable with that choice, so that's why I quit then.
Several decades later, Brown was on a break from Stanford University, where he worked as a professor in biomedical research.
I had no particular interest in food and no interest in going into business, but I had a sabbatical and I used it to think about what's the most important problem in the world that I could do something positive about. And I realized rather quickly that the most important problem in the world is the destructive impact of our use of animals as a food production technology. It is by a huge margin the most destructive technology on Earth. And it's a really urgent problem because it's pushed global ecosystems to the edge, and its impact is growing faster than the human population. So we're really in a pretty problematic situation, and something needs to be done.
It wasn't realistic, he figured, to expect other people to give up meat. But he had a radical thought. Feeling bullish, he set himself the challenge to come up with a meat alternative, a product which was as nourishing, safe, cheap, and most importantly, as tasty.
And that means we had to solve some very challenging scientific problems, not to be able to make them nutritious and affordable, but to make them delicious, to be figuring out what makes meat, fish, and dairy foods delicious and how to recreate that entire phenomenology more sustainably from plant ingredients turns out to be the most urgent and important scientific problem in the world today.
He assembled a crack team of scientists, and together they attempted to solve a problem which no one had ever addressed.
What it is in biochemical terms that creates the sensory experience that meat lovers crave, that makes the flavor and aroma and texture and juiciness and so forth of meat so appealing to meat eaters.
They made one vital discovery. The most crucial ingredient to the unique flavours and aromas of meat was an iron-containing molecule called heme, the secret sauce. But to make the perfect burger, many other ingredients were also required.
So our current formulation uses specific proteins from a number of sources. One of them is protein from wheat. Another protein comes from potatoes. We found a particular protein from potato that was a very good match to some of the critical kind of biophysical properties of proteins in animal tissues that are involved in the texture of meat. And then we have fat that mostly comes from coconut oil. And we have just simple nutrients like amino acids and vitamins, simple sugars that are pretty much the same molecules that are found in every living cell. But in the presence of heme, they undergo reactions that produce this explosion of flavor and aroma that's characteristic of meat.
The burger is now being produced in a large manufacturing facility and available in hundreds of restaurants. And it's pretty good, is it?
Well, I think it's pretty good, but more importantly, some of the best chefs in the world, chefs who are particularly known for their uncompromising approach to serving meat, have chosen to serve it, basically taken their reputation and their livelihood and put it on the line because they believe in our product as meat.
Several companies and universities are working on different types of meat substitute. Of course, for such projects to succeed, it's not enough just to recreate meat. The R&D department in Pat Brown's company Impossible Foods is investigating alternatives for milk and other dairy products. If he succeeds, the company could become an extraordinary cash cow. Just listen to the scale of his ambition.
We're dead serious about this. Our mission is to completely replace animals in the food system by 2035. And everything that we have done, all our strategies, our commercialization strategy, our research strategy, has been organized around that goal.
And you're talking globally, you're not just talking America, you're talking throughout the world.
Of course, yeah. The problem is a global problem. The solution has to be global. There's nothing about our technology that's US specific, and in fact, that's been one of the design principles. We need to have something that can be scaled globally. The ingredients have to be ingredients for which a scalable global supply chain is possible. The production technology has to be simple enough that it can be readily scaled around the world.
The livestock industry may be responsible for unsustainable greenhouse gas emissions, water use, land use. There's a strong case for eliminating it. But from at least one perspective, doing so would not be entirely welcome. Are you good news or bad news for cows?
Well, you'd have to ask the cows. I mean, I think there will still be cows left on Earth, but they'll be, I think, kind of in the same category of, be a small population of cows, remnant population of cows that are kept probably more as a curiosity. The domestic cow really isn't a wild creature anymore. There's no natural place for them in the global ecosystem.
We'll have cows in zoos, not on farms.
Well, pretty much. I think that if you look at how the economics will play out, there'll be no incentive for anyone to be producing mass quantities of cows. And the only incentive left for keeping them will be, I think, curiosity and historical interest.
Thanks a lot for listening to The Big Idea from the BBC World Service with me, David Edmonds. The producer is Ben Cooper. If you like the taste of this episode, please leave a rating or comment if your podcast provider allows this. You can even let me know on social media about the big ideas you think I should be looking at. In the next episode, an unforgettable programme on the unreliability of our memories.